We have spent quite a bit of time going through the draft-eligible players on the Buckeyes offense, but there are three more guys left on our list. Three offensive linemen. They're talented, but where do they stack up as NFL draft prospects? We dive into that today on Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, July 11th in the year 2023, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During today's episode, a frequent guest with us here this offseason. It's my guy. It's my favorite NFL draft analyst, Mr. Ryan Roberts of Ryzen Draft Scouting. Also, you can hear him on the First Team podcast, breaking down prospects. JT Toy-Malowau, Jack Sawyer, and others. Ryan and the guys will break them down every week this offseason. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
I appreciate it, Jay. Appreciate it, man. And congratulations for fully a married man now, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You said it before we started recording. The honeymoon stage is in full effect, and you said there's nothing better than that. And I'm here with you. Like, so far, I enjoy the stage of life and the marriage that I am in. Actually, yesterday was my wife's birthday. Had to have some pancakes and some watermelon and some bacon with her parents and with her dad. And I'm like, hey, I'm here for it. You got pancakes, bacon, and celebrating my wife's birthday at the same time. Ryan, that's a good equation for me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We just had our 6th-year wedding anniversary over the weekend as well. So we're man, it's in the celebration stage, I guess, for both of us, which is awesome. So
congratulations, man. I didn't realize it was 6 years, man. 6
yeah, man.
years, 2 kids. You gonna be planning for a third?
No third. We're going for the decade next year though, because we'll be together 9. We're together 9 years. We'll be together 10 next year. So that's what we have looking forward to. 2 kids is enough for us, so we're good after that.
That's a major accomplishment right there. 10 years together, 6 years of marriage so far. Well, eventually 10 years. I'm here for it, man. Congratulations to you, and I hope things are going well with the youngsters at home. I understand there's a little hiccup recently, but I hope things are kind of, well, as smooth as they can be for having 2 toddlers in the household.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things where it's just something always happens, you know, like it's just it's unavoidable at this point, and it's especially bad when it's a newborn, because like everything that happens to them, you're like freaking out. You know what I mean? Oh, why does she have a little cut on her face? Why is her skin breaking out? It's just like, it's all crazy stuff though, man. But it's we'll get through it, and we're all good. We're all good over here.
That's a good deal. I think the Buckeye fans would say that they're not going to say they're all good, but somewhat good with the guys I'm going to discuss during today's show: Donovan Jackson, Matthew Jones, and Joshua Fryar in that order. 2 of them are returning starters, 2 full-time starters from a year ago. Joshua Fryar has started a few games, but never been a consistent starter. But the first guy up for the list today is Donovan Jackson. Talented young man, 6'4", 300 pounds, starting left guard for the Buckeyes a year ago, starting left guard for the Buckeyes in the upcoming season. When you watch Jackson's film, Ryan, what do you see?
I mean, I see a lot of desirable things that you want to see. I mean, I honestly wouldn't have been shocked. And obviously, I know it's not going to happen now since they got the transfer of Josh Simmons, and Fryar's obviously looking like the other offensive tackle in the conversation. But I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have said, like, hey, maybe we can move Donovan Jackson out to left tackle, because he's a really talented mover, man. I mean, if we're talking about, if you just ask me in the 2024 potentially of the offensive guard class, who is maybe the most physically gifted of them all? The answer is probably Donovan Jackson. I mean, 6'4", 300 pounds, incredibly physical, incredibly powerful, really smooth mover. He hits all the thresholds you're going to look for when an NFL team is saying, you know, from a height, weight, speed, athleticism, flexibility perspective, he's got all the makings. And we saw a lot of flashes of dominance in his first year, but obviously there's a maturation that needs to happen from year 1 as a starter to year 2 as a starter. And if he takes a big jump, I think he's in contention as one of the top guards in this class, maybe the top guard in the class, because this kid has everything physically that you want. It's just about the natural maturation that happens from a redshirt freshman to a redshirt sophomore this year.
When you think about moving from left guard to left tackle, it's one of those things for Ohio State. There's a need at left tackle. And even though they brought in a transfer who could start at left tackle, nobody really knows if the jump from the G5 level to the P5 level is going to be one that Simmons can make and make it quickly. Because, Ryan, we talk about it all the time, kind of in a joking way, but not really joking. Ohio State plays Notre Dame in the first month of the season. And so you want him to have a guy that's not only quickly getting acclimated to football at the Power 5 level, but also a guy who can really go up against one of the best teams in the country in the first month of the season and saying, hey, our offseason program, our fall camp, the first few games, this is your benchmark. Here's where you tell us if you can do it or not. So I understand Simmons is there, but it's kind of a comfort thing that the Buckeyes could put Jackson at left tackle. But from a draft perspective, would it benefit him to go to left tackle this year to raise his draft stock?
No, I don't think so, because he's not a left tackle on the NFL level.
Right.
I honestly want to see him, and I believe this is the course of action, obviously, is I want to see him stick at guard. I want him to play inside. I want him to get valuable reps. And also, I think that his demeanor is much better inside. I think that we always hyper-focus, Jay, on like where a guy should play based upon measurables, right? A certain arm length, a certain foot quickness, those quantifiable things. But the one thing that we don't talk about enough is temperaments, play style. And Donovan Jackson's a mauling presence inside, man. He wants to be super physical. He wants to get vertical. He wants to attack the line of scrimmage. He's not a player that I would call very, what's the right word? He's not very controlled right now. He's not a guy that is super, just let things come to him. He's an aggressor. He's a guy that wants to get out in front. He's a guy that wants to be an assertive presence up front. And at left tackle, it's not really a fit, right? You think about the best left tackles in college football over the last couple of years. I mean, you could even include Paris Johnson, obviously, in that conversation, right? And Joe Walton of Notre Dame this year, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, that are obviously going to be in the 2024 class. But those guys are very balanced. They're very patient, and I don't really see Donovan Jackson as that type of player. Donovan Jackson is an explosive, powerful kid that wants to be assertive in the run game. So I actually think that staying at left guard is more advantageous for him, because we saw a lot of flashes in 2022, but everybody knows who watches him, including Buckeye fans, I would assume, that Donovan Jackson could still get a whole lot better. I mean, there's no reason that this kid can't be an all-American level player if he takes the right amount of jump in 2023.
As far as guards go, Ryan, if you're trying to rank them 1 through 5, I don't know. I may have missed this episode on the podcast, or not sure if you've done it already. But 1 through 5, where does he fit? Not saying you got to get him like, hey, he's definitely number 1, but is he 1 or 2? Is he 3 or 4? Where does he fit inside that? Or maybe he's outside of the top 5.
So we haven't done the guard episode yet, but I'm early on the guards, and I can tell you that he's going to be the number 2 player on the offensive guard board for me, just because. And this goes into his advantage a little bit. It's not a great interior offensive line class next year. It does not appear to be one. I mean, outside of the Cooper Beebes of the world from Kansas State and Christian Mahogany from Boston College and a few other guys, it's not really a great class overall. So I think Donovan Jackson is going to be a top 2 to 3 offensive guard for most people on the media side of things and on the team side of things to start the year, just by default, to be honest, because you're going to look at him and say, he's got crazy talent. It's not a great offensive guard class. He's going to be in that conversation just based upon pure God-given traits. And I think that's where he's going to be. That's where he's definitely going to be early on for me. And I think that's where he'll be for most people to start the year.
We love it. Ryan Roberts comes on the show and praises Buckeyes, and he's not done yet. Got more on Donovan Jackson and Matthew Jones and Josh Fryar coming at you next here on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. The weather is warm outside. It's hot in most places, and we're looking for ways to revamp our wardrobe and things that make us and allow us to be comfortable as the temperatures keep rising. Where Bird Dogs provide shorts and even pants to help you stay comfortable this time of year. Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but guys, they fit way better. And Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege, or use promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Ryan, you went through and gave a lot of good high praise for Donovan Jackson, but when it comes to the left guard spot, would he benefit from being – so he talked about the versatility, left tackle, no. Let's say Matthew Jones goes down. Do they move him to right guard just to show some versatility, just to raise him up a little bit?
I mean, I think that when you're talking about an interior offensive lineman, Jay, like you're always going to value the ability to play all three interior spots. And I mean, I look at Donovan Jackson and I say that there's no reason that kid can't be a center. There's no reason he can't play both guard spots. I mean, there's no, because the 6'4", 300 plus pounds athletic kid, I mean, he's not one of those offensive guards. And we've seen him obviously in the past. Like I think of like, if we want an Ohio State comparison, you remember Michael Jordan that played offensive guard for Ohio State. He was like 6'6", 6'7", man. Like he wasn't going to play center ever, right? Like you can't just make that switch happen. But Donovan Jackson has a body type where you say he's big enough to stay at both guard spots. He's also not too big where he can't transition into center. So, I mean, could he do it? Absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, I think he's a guard at the next level, but the ability to snap, and I'm sure, and because I know they're breaking in a new center, it's most likely going to be Carson Hinsman, obviously, the redshirt freshman, but you know, I would assume, it's just my opinion, and this is usually how offensive line coaches work, is that I'm sure Donovan Jackson, I'm sure Matthew Jones, I'm sure some of these other interior offensive linemen have been snapping in practice in emergency situations in case something happens and a guy goes down and you have to make that type of switch. So I think that he has the body type. I think he has the athleticism. I think he has the versatility where if I needed Donovan Jackson to play all three interior offensive line spots, I think he could do it. And on the college level, I think he could play offensive tackle if you wanted him to. I just think that it's more advantageous to him playing inside just because I just think that his personality fits a lot better in there.
Where do you think he gets drafted in the spring, Ryan?
Oh, man, that's such a tough question. I mean, today he's probably a late day 2 player, right? So he's probably a third rounder.
That's not bad at all.
It's not bad at all for a kid that's just going to be a redshirt sophomore. He could be higher, though, Jay. Like, I mean, we could be talking about this, like, leading up to April if he declares as a redshirt sophomore. We could be talking about him as a top 50 pick. Like, it's possible. It really is. Because, again, he's got things that are in his advantage. 1, he's incredibly talented. 2, it's not a great offensive guard class as of right now. And if it stays similar into the fall and into the decision-making process, there's no reason that he can't contend to be the first offensive guard off the board. I like Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State a ton. He's my top-ranked guy right now. He is not nearly as talented as Donovan Jackson. He's just fifth-year senior, knows how to play the game, super physical. Donovan Jackson's not there yet, but he can get there. So I think it's very possible that he's a top 100 pick, if not a top 50 pick. I think it's very possible, but obviously a lot needs to happen, and there's no guarantee that he declares, obviously, as a third-year sophomore. So we shall see if that happens or not.
Going to have another multi-year starter coming up here for the Buckeyes next for us, Ryan. Donovan Jackson will be a multi-year starter, and then also Matthew Jones as well. Matthew Jones is one of those guys that's been around, played with some talented offensive linemen, DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson Jr., and others. But Matthew Jones this year, and I've been talking about it on the show about the leadership qualities and the guys that the new quarterback, whether it's Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, they need to rely on and be able to lean on the offensive linemen. Matthew Jones is one of those guys that they're going to be looking at him and saying, hey, buddy, you've been here for a while. If we need to run behind you during crucial points in games to get first downs, we need to do it. That's from a Buckeye standpoint right now. Draft perspective, Ryan, how do you view Matthew Jones?
I think Matthew Jones is just a super rock solid, tough, physical kid. Like, that's just what I see. I mean, we had spring measurements on him at 6'3.5" and 315 pounds. Length is fine, playing obviously offensive guard inside. He had a 6th round Blesto grade this spring, so a 6th round grade from the NFL. And I mean, Jay, I mean, honestly, when I look at him, I just say, is there anything super flashy about Matthew Jones? Absolutely not. He's not like body beautiful. He's not the most incredible athlete of all time. He just is pretty solid at most things, and he's been dependable. And like you said, that experience matters a lot for NFL teams. It does. Teams shy away from guys that haven't played a ton of football at offensive line transitioning to the next level. A guy like Matthew Jones, they're going to look at him and say, he's a Big Ten multi-year starter, played a lot of games for the Buckeyes. He's even played a little bit between left and right guard during his career. He's played both spots. That matters. And we talked a little bit about Donovan Jackson maybe being able to play all three interior offensive line positions. Matthew Jones is going to have to show that he can. And that's not saying that he has to play center in 2023. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is the sticking point. I always talk about a sticking point, a way that you can stick on a roster, a way that you can find your niche, your role. He, as a day three football player, he has to show that he has alignment versatility and that he can back up multiple positions, because there's most likely on the next level, Matthew Jones is going to be a day three football player who's going to have to find a role on the next level. Make yourself valuable. Show that you can back up multiple spots and potentially contend for a starting spot at offensive guard, maybe year 2, year 3. So I wouldn't be shocked long-term if Matthew Jones is a part-time starter on the NFL level, but I think that the baseline for him is that he has a chance to stick just because he's a really tough physical kid that has played a lot of football, incredibly experienced. He's going to play hard, man, at the end of the day. So we're not talking about a kid that I think is ever going to be a top 100 pick. Like, I don't think he's going to be a day 2 player. I definitely don't think he's going to be a first-round player. But I think he's a borderline and probably draftable football player who has a sticking point because he does the little things well enough that is going to deserve attention for an NFL staff.
Ryan, this sounds like the conversation we had about Cade Stover and how Cade does, how he's solid. Now, Cade might get drafted higher, but at the same time, talking about a guy who is solid, that does the little things, and is just consistent at doing what he does very well. Very similar to the conversation we had about Cade Stover a few weeks ago. But at the same time, Cade Stover could raise his draft stock if he plays out of his mind this year. And I think Matthew Jones is the same way. He could raise his draft stock and get drafted higher than maybe 6th round, 5th round. What does he need to do to move up to possibly being a 3rd or 4th round draft pick?
I mean, first and foremost, he obviously was banged up a little bit last year, right? So, like, you need to play the full season. You need to be able to have a healthy season. And you need to be able to, because I'm underselling his I'm not underselling. I'm selling his athleticism as just average, right? Like slightly below average for NFL standards. If he's able to go to one of the major all-star games, Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine, whatever it ends up being, maybe even NFLPA Bowl out in Pasadena, whatever one of the major bowl games he's going, because he's going to be at one of these bowl games. He's a draftable grade. He's been at Ohio State for multiple years. He's a multi-year starter. He's going to be at one of those major bowl games, all-star games, I should say. The question is can he go there and show that he's a better athlete than I'm giving him credit for? Can he show that he has a higher upside than I'm giving him credit for? Because I look at Matthew Jones and I say, that's a decently high floor kid that has a lower ceiling. Like, I just don't see multi-year starter on the NFL level. I don't see, consistent starter on the NFL level. I see backup who has value and maybe could be a part-time starter eventually in the NFL. If he shows that he's a better athlete than I think he is, and that he has a higher upside in him, then he could be drafted potentially a little bit higher, maybe early day 3, maybe more in the 4th round range comparative to the 5th, 6th round that I'm kind of talking about right now. So the All-Star circuit's going to be big for him, but more than anything, he has to have a really good final season and play a full course of the schedule to show that he can be that type of guy. Because I have my doubts that he could be that guy, but if he's able to have a stellar final year, which we've seen in the past, then he has a chance to rise, obviously.
We've heard Ryan Roberts go through and discuss the scouting report for Donovan Jackson and Matthew Jones. There's one more Buckeye left on the list. It's Joshua Fryar. What does Ryan have to say about this right tackle, potential starting right tackle for the Buckeyes in the fall? You'll find out next here on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. Billiards Plus also can set you up with a brand new top-of-the-line grill that will last for generations. We all know how hard it is with the supply chain issues this year and getting certain things shipped on time. So when it comes to ordering that one big gift for someone you love, check out Billiards Plus. They have exactly what you have been looking for. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Ohausen, Canada, Billiards, and more. Plus, top-of-the-line grills from PK, Napoleon, Memphis, and Le Griddle. that will be the last grill you own. Seriously, these grills stand the test of time. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Check them out at billiards-plus.com. Billiards Plus, family owned and operated for generations. 2 down, 1 to go. I love when Ryan comes on the show because he brings not just a great opinions or good opinions about the players, but you can tell that he watches the film. The next guy we're going to talk about, Ryan, and I asked you this prior to us saying we're going to bring him up on the show, is one Buckeye who's draft eligible that does not have much film on him. It's Joshua Fryar. So I'm really interested to find out and hear what you learned when you watched the film of Joshua Fryar.
I'm really fascinated by this offensive tackle group for Ohio State, which I know Ohio State fans are really excited, really interested. I shouldn't say excited. They're interested to see.
It's a good word. Interested is a good word right there.
It is, man, because, I mean, right now we're talking about Joshua Fryar. We're talking about Josh Simmons, obviously, that transferred in from San Diego State. I watched both, and I watched Josh Simmons actually a little bit more than Fryar because there's just not a lot of film on Fryar, right? Like, there's just not. It's just kind of – it's funny. My buddy Corey Kinnan, who obviously is a big Buckeyes fan, he told me about Fryar last year. He was like, I actually really like this kid. You know, he's a physical kid. I think if he starts at right tackle or inside a guard, I think he could be a pretty solid football player. So I kind of went into this one with a little bit of knowledge about Fryar, but not a ton of in-depth knowledge of him from my own personal perspective. If he's starting at left tackle, Jay, I'm a little terrified, to be honest. I am. I'm not feeling great about it because I think the best things that Joshua Fryar does, in my opinion, is I think he understands. I think his length is fine. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. But I think that he really understands how to use it properly, right? Like he understands angles. He understands leverage points. I think that he is a pretty controlled football player. And I think he's strong. Like I think he has a pretty nice core. I think that he can generate power in tight spaces. And I think his movement skills at right tackle and offensive guard are solid. You know, I think they're sufficient. Left tackle is a completely different animal, though. Because although right tackle, left tackle have become a little bit more interchangeable with how the NFL has developed or just football has developed in general, I still think that there is a key difference between being a blindside protector and not being a blindside protector.
Correct.
And I don't see that with Fryar. I think that he could potentially get the job done at right tackle. I think he could be a serviceable player there, just talking about from a college perspective. Inside at guard, I actually think he would be a pretty good player, and which I know it's a little tough for Ohio State because you already have Donovan Jackson, you already have Matthew Jones, you have experienced guards obviously now in this team. So it's not like Fryar just is able to, you know, just kind of fit into one of those guard spots. So I think that he, though, because he's played both spots in college football, he's both played tackle and guard, which is valuable. It is. Showing that you can play multiple spots obviously is very important. I'm not sure I see NFL prospect right now. I'm just not sure I see that because one, he just hasn't played enough. I mean, teams want to see 3 to 4 games. Just really haven't seen enough snaps of Joshua Fryar in general. From a just talent perspective, you could talk me into him being a guy eventually, as far as being a interior offensive lineman on the next level who has the ability to get you out of a game at right tackle in a pinch. But I mean, I'm just being honest here. I'd be a little terrified if he's your starting left tackle game one. Not game one, because Ohio State's obviously not going to start against the best competition game one. Game one, he could be your starting left tackle. When you start getting into the Big Ten schedule and then playing the out of conferences like the Notre Dames of the world, that's where it would start giving me pause. I don't think that he is a left tackle at a dominant level. I think he could be serviceable against some. I just don't necessarily see left tackle with Joshua Fryar.
You know, Ryan, it sounds like you're talking about a guy that, even if he starts in the fall, should stay in school and enter potentially enter the 2025 draft. We said it once. I'll say it again, Ryan. Turn it back over to you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, nothing wrong with it at all. Because, I mean, Jay, we're talking about a kid that hasn't played much, right? So, I mean, if he has a chance to be a multi-year starter for Ohio State, he increases his value tremendously. Like, the age thing, because it's the age thing that people always talk about, right? Oh, staying in school and maybe you're a 5th or 6th year senior compared to being a 4th year player, you'll lose some value when you're an older player. Not an offensive line, you don't really. Not really. When we're talking about a guy that's a borderline draftable player, potentially, you gain value because experience matters so much. So the age thing, I think you throw that out the window, especially with a guy like a Joshua Fryar. I don't see the athleticism length combination to be a high-level draft pick eventually, even if he goes back for a second year starter, I should say. So I think that I look at this kid and I'm like, stay in college as long as you can, man.
Yeah.
Gain that valuable experience because you kind of need to be, how I kind of talked about Matthew Jones is what you also need to be if you're Joshua Fryar. You need to be a grinder. You need to be a guy that can back up multiple spots. You need to be a guy that is just a role player on your team. And nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of guys that get 8 to 10 year contracts or careers in the NFL just being serviceable backups, and they're set up for life, generational wealth. So nothing wrong with it at all. I think that he could be a good football player for Ohio State. I think he could be a borderline draftable player if he's able to really harness his strengths. But again, we're talking about a kid that's just barely played football at this point.
Exactly, Ryan. It's fun having you on the show and look forward to diving into the defensive players. It's one of the rare times, Ryan, we've had so many players to dissect in the offseason. We got multiple D tackles, multiple D ends, multiple linebackers, multiple corners, and multiple safeties. I don't know what's going on with Ohio State. It's like they just waited and stockpiled all this talent for this offseason for us to discuss here on the show. If you could, Ryan, let everyone know they can follow you on Twitter. If they want to keep up with the recruiting battle that Ohio State and Notre Dame have with a few players, where they could catch that as well. And also the podcast, some good things you guys have going on coming up with that show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so First Team Podcast, First Team College Football and NFL Draft Show. I do a show obviously with Joe DeLeon and Matt Sims, obviously Chris Sims' younger brother. I think it's a really good listen. If you guys haven't heard it before, I'm at Rise and Draft on Twitter, like Shake and Bake, Rise and Draft. Go follow there. And Ohio State, yes, Ohio State is in many recruiting battles with Notre Dame, and they've won most of them so far this cycle. I mean, you just got Justin Scott, obviously, in the 2024 class. You got Jalen McClain, obviously, the safety out of New Jersey. Notre Dame and Ohio State are fighting hard for Kingston Viliamalasa, who is the star linebacker out of St. John Bosco. So if you guys want any continued recruiting coverage, or you want to get to know the Notre Dame roster before, obviously, their game in late September, go to irishbreakdown.com. And Jay, as always, man, I appreciate you for having me on. Really do.
Ryan, I really enjoyed it. And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. A couple more shows left this week. Got some good stuff coming your way. Subscribe to Locked On Buckeyes on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, so you don't miss a beat. This has been Locked On Buckeyes here on a Tuesday. I'll see you next time.